Yes, I went to Africa to date. And I'm going to tell you everything about it because, well, I didn't go there specifically for that. I actually went there to see some giraffes and zebras. And I'll tell you which I had the better experience with, but I'll tell you the positives, negatives, and we're actually going to talk about, Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, where I went to specifically. I also went to Egypt, but obviously I wasn't dating there. It's not allowed. But I will also tell you a little bit about the country and whether or not I would ever live there, because Nairobi was in a top five list of mine when I moved from America abroad. Now I ended up in Bangkok, Thailand, and I am streaming live. Welcome to my live stream. Now I am a real life passport bro. Now, what does it mean? First, I hate the term. Whoever thought of that term is an asshole. But what you see a lot of times on social media are not really passport bros, because these are just losers who are able to afford, cheaper hookers and better looking hookers in Southeast Asia, South America, and Africa. You always see them with the tattooed girls, with, half naked, always trying to get some social media time. This is not what this is about for guys like me. We genuinely come here for more traditional women and more conservative and traditional cultures. We would never actually put our significant others on blast on social media, and we certainly wouldn't be dating somebody with tattoos and who dresses provocatively, and on and on and on. So what you see on social media is not passport bros, but I digress. So, I've always wanted to go to Africa. I wanted to go to Kenya, Nairobi specifically, because, it is sort of the, I would say, most successful and most known, I would say, African country. And, I exclude Egypt because Egypt, even though I did go there to see the pyramids, it is more considered to be part of Middle East, right? And I didn't want to go to South Africa because it is kind of like very sort of Western country. I wanted to go to real Africa. And my thing was I wanted to see a giraffe and zebra and other animals in the wild. And boy, was I not disappointed. But I also wanted to see some remote African villages, which I also got to see, and it was great. But I also decided, hey, I am a single guy essentially. I'm not in a committed relationship right now here in Thailand. Let's see, because in America for the last over 10 years, I've pretty much exclusively dated Black women, but African American women. And here in Thailand, we don't really have many Black women at all. And but even if we do, they're from Britain and America, and I have no interest in dating Western women. Of course, the whole point of being here is to, not do that. So I decided, okay, let me go to Africa and see some giraffes, zebras, and see what the dating scene is like. And I got to tell you, so first, let me start with the positive. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that I am streaming on the platforms that I'm supposed to be streaming, which is YouTube. And let me know in the comment section if you which platform you're watching me on. So I'm supposed to be streaming on YouTube, and today I even figured out maybe I'm able to stream on TikTok, but I don't really see it right now. Let me know if you're watching me on TikTok or YouTube. Let's see. I'm just gonna do one more check, but I don't really see it one way or another. So okay. Anyway, so the let me start with the positives, and the first one is I do have to say that generally speaking, girls in Kenya specifically dressed better, and by better I mean like even better than Southeast Asia, in America and Europe, because what I mean by that is a lot of women dress well, I would even say sexy, but also classy. I did not see too many like booty shorts or super short skirts or lots of cleavages. It's summer, so it's summer. It's kind of sort of appropriate, but at the same time, I didn't really see anybody dressed like, whoa, that's not appropriate at all. So, but at the same time, they dress like they're very proud and they want to attract men. Like here in Southeast Asia, a lot of girls just don't give a crap if they ever attract a man. At least like that's what it seems. They wear mom jeans and Crocs, and it comes from modesty, but also it's kind of like, but of course in America and other countries, girls wear like, very provocative clothes that are a little bit too much in the other end, in the other extreme. So it is certainly something that I think Kenyan girls found to be right in a sweet spot. And I also think that they are much more open and honest about wanting a man. Like in America, in Europe, women essentially, well, I don't need no man, or at least I'm going to act like I don't need no man until they're in their 40s, and then we'll know what happens. But in Kenya, they look up, they flirt, they smile. Once a day, even I had a girl come up to me, introduce herself or ask for my number, and that was very that definitely that was awesome. Not gonna lie. And I noticed that happened to me in America and Philippines and some European countries, but here in Thailand, in most of the Southeast Asian countries that I have visited, which I have, I think I almost visited almost all of them so far, except for Singapore and Myanmar. I certainly, uh, uh, sorry about that. So I certainly, oh, my phone is misbehaving. Yeah. All right. I love technology. So yeah, but at the same time, the girls here in Southeast Asia, they're much more polite, but also modest, and they don't really ever look up. A lot of times you can catch a look from a girl for a second, and boom, all of a sudden she lowers her eyes, which is of modesty and conservative culture, but it's hard to flirt, obviously, right? And a lot of times just cold approaches here is not a thing. You can't really come up to a girl here and just kind of start a conversation at a coffee shop or at the subway. Like it's just not a thing here if you want a traditional girl. But in Kenya, it was definitely a thing. And those two things I definitely enjoy. Girls were being very open to, connections. When girls turned me down, I never had a bad experience girls turning me down in Kenya. Unlike in America where they are rude a lot of times, they specifically try to make a guy feel bad. And I know a lot of guys just don't want to do it anymore, just specifically because of that. That doesn't really bother me as much, and I have no problems at actually calling them out on that. But I didn't have to do that in Kenya at all. They were all quite polite, even when they were rejecting me. So, and when I reject a girl, I also try to be very, very, very polite and kind, because I don't want her to stop doing that, to be able to find maybe another guy that's better suited for her. So I always try to do that. So now that's where the positives end, and I'll tell you why. Because at the end of the day, thinking about my experience, and I actually started dating before I started getting on the dating apps, which I normally don't use. But I said, okay, it's an OkCupid app. I think it's the only dating app that I know where you can actually switch location without being in like a travel mode or whatever, like a manually switch location. And I did that about 2 months before. And I started having conversations with quite a few women. I definitely did not have shortage of matches, but I'm kind of used to that because in Southeast Asia here, usually guys, especially Westerners, do get good number of matches. I almost never swipe left and right, which like I said, I don't really use apps that much here. And I started conversations, and from the very beginning to pretty much all the way to the end, and even some conversations past my departure, I definitely felt like Kenya was not at all a traditional country that I thought it would be when it came to dating and family values. It was very much like an American culture. Now, This is something that I warned myself and everybody else who comes to Southeast Asia, specifically Philippines, about. You know, this notion that, oh, I'm going to leave America and I'm going to go to another country in Southeast Asia or South America, and all of a sudden, all of these submissive, amazing women are going to line up for me. That used to be the case, but it's no longer true, and I'll tell you why. Everyone's got internet. I mean, I visited some remote African villages during my trip, and I've also been to some provinces here in Thailand and many other Southeast Asian countries. And in any province, the girls have the smartphones, and the smartphones have Wi-Fi or cell service or both. So if you think that somehow these remote areas have these perfectly untouched women, you are delulu. These women, if they speak English, that is the key word here. If they speak English, they have already been damaged if they manage to get on dating apps and social media and Instagram, no matter what. The foreigners and men don't have to be around in large numbers in order for these women to get very much corrupt and simped for. The number of dudes who would find these girls on the live streams and Instagram and dating apps and simp the shit out of them is staggering. I mean, honestly, it's not even that hard. Like here, all I have to do is turn my, what is it, TikTok live on, and I see some average looking Thai girl doing a live stream, or a Filipino girl doing a live stream, and there will be a ridiculous number of pathetic Western American and European simps giving her compliments and a lot of times sending her money. So a girl in a village, in a remote village, very much is aware of her value on the dating market if she speaks English, and she understands. She can talk to these guys, right? She can understand what the con artists like Beyonce and Taylor Swift, and what's the other one with blue hair that looks like a boy? Anyway, they once they understand, once they speak English, they understand. Well, there's no difference whether that girl is in Los Angeles or that girl is in a remote village in Africa or Thailand or whatever. The result is the same. As a matter of fact, you can even say that these girls are even more spoiled because, if a girl is in LA, in order to earn some money, in order to get some money from men, she kind of has to meet them in person and do things, if you know what I mean, in person. But these girls who are sitting in their remote villages, they a lot of times don't have to do anything but smile and flirt with these guys in order to get money, which goes way further than in LA or in America and Europe, right? So you would say, I would claim that these girls in these countries that speak English are actually much more brutal than on you, gentlemen, especially you gentlemen who simp, than girls in Los Angeles. So that's exactly what happened in Kenya, because Kenya, just so you know, there are two main, official languages. One is Swahili, which is actually spoken in some other African countries with different dialects, in English. So pretty much everybody, except for literally a grandmother of my driver in that remote village that we visited, she was the only one who did not speak English. So everybody speaks English. Now, do I always understand what they're saying with their accents? No, that was a problem. By the way, here's a word that I didn't know how they pronounce. Shot, right? I'm like, I mean, shot, like shot, or like, oh, I just shot my pants. No, apparently shot is this. Shot. My red shot, it looks good on me. So it's not always easy to understand the African accent. But I've practiced and I think I got better over more than 2 weeks of being there. So that definitely kind of took me sort of by surprise and sort of not by surprise, because like I said, like when you go to Philippines, that's another thing. Guys come to Thailand and go like, oh, it's so hard to get, to find a good, girl here. I was like, yeah, because the good girls here don't speak English and you have to speak Thai to them. Like I have a rule. I do not date even casually. I'm dating several girls casually right now. None of them speak English. like almost at all. So those are the good girls here. So yeah, you have to go and learn one of the most difficult languages in the world. Now, if you're in Brazil or Colombia and other countries, yeah, Portuguese and Spanish are a little bit, not a little bit, much easier to learn. But here, access is much more difficult because you need to learn a difficult language, but the reward is much greater. Uh, but in Kenya and a lot of African countries, and Philippines here as well, there is no barrier because they all speak English. So I wasn't that surprised, but nevertheless, the this, what I call it, the real virus is transmitted by speaking English. So now, the one thing that I still was surprised by, because most of these women acted like, well, I don't need no man, right? In America, at least in America, most women technically can argue that they don't need no man, at least like as a providers, right? If you look at the traditional relationships, the most important role that a man plays in a family is a provider, right? Provider, protector, decision maker, and so forth. Um, so many American women, because they've decided to, get educated and get like educated, like masters and PhDs, and start making money and dedicate themselves to their careers in their 20s, um, uh, rather than actually creating families. And then, of course, they post videos that I do quite a lot of response videos to, or reaction videos to. Um, and that's when they, of course, regret it. But at least American women and European women can say, well, at least I don't need a provider. I'm doing it myself. I can buy myself flowers, right? Now, again, that leads to a very lonely, depressing life in their 40s and 50s. But they're young, they don't know that. But the contrast is, so American women, European women, they can say, listen, I don't need a guy to be able to afford an apartment and a car and healthcare and all that stuff. But in Kenya, boy, nobody, pretty much very few people can afford a decent lifestyle. And specifically this girl, there's a lot of people, and you can see it on the streets, just people are standing around, you know and you're like, what are these people doing? But they don't have any jobs. Like, there are no jobs pretty much, and a lot of people just don't have them. And a lot of young women don't have these jobs because it's hard to find one when you don't have experience or education and so forth. So there's a lot of young women who have like no money whatsoever, just literally no money, which is going to be a problem in the next thing that I'm going to mention. But let me finish this thought first. Um, so, I, but so if anything, how how people always say, like, oh, these passport bros, they go to other countries and they prey on these poor women, because these women need food, and it's so pathetic. When you actually come here and you know how pathetic of a statement is, it's no less pathetic sort of in Kenya, because sometimes I was like, hey, does anybody care that I actually can afford to give you a much, much, much better life? And I'm not talking about like a Mercedes and a first class travel. I'm talking about like food, decent security, decent apartment, health. Like, we're talking about basic shit that I can, provide as a man. So in Kenya, these women absolutely need a man. I'm talking about just as a provider. Now, and I don't mean like as gold diggers. Like, gold diggers, they're not looking for men for food and healthcare, right? They're looking for men to buy them Louis Vuitton purses and Mercedes, right? Different type of a need. But these women need a provider, and yet they still act. And I don't know if because they actually convince themselves, and with help of Beyonce and Taylor Swift, or they act like they definitely don't need a man. And the number of times that I was stood up on dates was pretty much the only time I remember that happening at this type of rate was in America. And they kind of divide into two, right? The girl who schedule a date and she just disappears and doesn't show up, and the girls who basically kind of call you or message you at the exact same time when they were supposed to be there and saying, oh yeah, listen, I just finished the meeting, so I'm going to take a shower, get ready, and get into Uber. And of course, any man who has any self-respect say, yeah, don't bother, or you can play a bit of a game and say, yeah, sure, come over here, and you actually leave and let her learn her lesson the hard way, whatever. So and then I told these women, I said, listen, I'm not going to wait for you. You're not here. I'll give you another 5 minute, 10 minute courtesy, buffer, but after that, I'm gone. And just like, at least here in Thailand, when it does happen, the girl is very apologetic. She said, listen, I'm very sorry. I couldn't call you. I was in the meeting. Would you please give me a second chance? I apologize. I will meet you at any time or place that's convenient for you. I would really like to meet you. Uh, American women, as you probably know, if you're watching me from America or Europe, that's not how they roll, and neither do Kenyan women. They basically absolutely immediately gaslight you, right? Oh yeah, you're such a loser. You understand that you cannot handle a woman who's busy, and just all of that stuff, and you just hang up, right? You just hang up, but the reaction is also very similar to what I experienced and a lot of guys experience in America, rather than what I would experience in more of a traditional country like Thailand or other Southeast Asian or South American countries. So that was definitely quite interesting. Now, another thing that I've noticed, and at first, I thought these girls are definitely gold digging, because every time I said, hey, let's meet up, but 15 minutes before or 30 minutes before they're supposed to leave, or even sometimes immediately, they would say, hey, listen, you're going to pay for my Uber, right? And as a man with some self-respect, I always say, of course not. Like, if you show up here, first of all, you have to show up here. You have to show up here on time. You have to look presentable. You have to look like your pictures. If we're meeting off of a dating app, and if you do, then I'll buy you a drink, right? And if we get along, maybe I'll buy you dinner if we decide to spend more time together. But I am not forking over cash just so I can be presented with an opportunity to change your life for the next freaking 30, 40, 50 years. Not going to happen. If you can't get to me, then you don't want this enough. And in my head, and I hate to sound like a douchebag, but I'm just trying to sound a realist. Unlike in Thailand, which I can still make this case, but in Kenya, there's certainly way more, pretty girls with nice booties than men who are qualified to be heads of households. So the ratio, the prize is not a woman like in America or Europe. The prize here and in those countries is the man who can be a good provider, who is a good man, who can make good decisions, and so on and so on and so on. So that is definitely was a big shock to me. However, once I started talking to some guys, and I say, guys, do you do this, or is it just because I'm a white guy, I'm a foreigner? They're like, no, we do this. I'm like, wait, just like, you pay for these girls just so you have an opportunity to just like meet them? They're like, yeah, I got to do it. I go, no, I don't got to do shit. Why would you do that? Why would you simp so hard right from the very beginning? And you know what? I stood my ground and I didn't do it. So a lot of girls canceled. Now, there is a bit of a nuance here. As these girls canceled, some just say, oh, you're broke, fucking blah, 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 N-word, you just can't afford me. I'm like, okay, sure. But some said, listen, I'm really sorry, but I have to cancel because I genuinely don't have any money for Uber. Now, my response was like, wait a second, why do you have to be chauffeured? Uber is a luxury service. You're being chauffeured somewhere in a car. You can still take a bus. You can still take a motorbike taxi, and all of those are much cheaper. And that's what I tell girls here also. If they like, I'm like, no, 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 no. So why do you have to be driven in a car with a chauffeur? Now, that also had an interesting comeback there, because these girls, unlike a lot of girls in America and even here Southeast Asia, they say, well, just so you know, I'm wearing a nice dress for you and heels. Like, I can't take a motorbike taxi. I cannot, or I cannot be in a bus. Now, the bus is a little bit of a less of a case that they have about the bus, but at least I understand they want to look presentable. But I still, I was like, listen, I'm also very sorry. I understand your situation, but I'm not really sure if I can date someone who's that broke. I mean, if you're that broke, I you know what I mean? Like, I can't. And I can never be sure that you're dating me for the right reasons, right? I want to date a girl who has her own thing going on, has her own life, maybe not a life of luxury, but a life. But if you are that broke, it's not really a life that I can trust to, have any type of feelings towards me. And I need to know that it's not just the money. So, but a couple of girls that I ended up meeting, I remember this one girl said, "Listen, just so you know, I have to leave really early because I need to figure out which buses to take and where the connections are." And she basically was trying to figure it out for like 2 hours. And she said, "Listen, there's no connect to get to you. There's no connection for the buses. Is there a way we can meet like in one of these places where the bus can actually stop?" And then I said, "Don't worry about it. I'll pay for your Uber." And this is where I want to you gentlemen understand, and because this is a big, 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 big difference, right? Uh, Paying money for a girl upfront a lot of times is a sin and a very simpy thing to do, because you're essentially, you know, shutting the door on, hey, this girl actually wants to meet me for who I am, rather than because this is a free dinner, right? Now, when a girl says, "Listen, I'm genuinely just going to get there myself on the bus with my own money or whatever," and she's just genuinely having like problems with connections, because fucking Nairobi and Kenya, shithole country. I'm sorry. I rarely agree with Donald Trump, but it's a shithole country. Like, you cannot get it. It's just not very convenient in any way. And when it's dark, well, a lot of women don't even want to be on the bus because it's not as safe. It's not a very safe place. So I understand. But for those women who say, "Yeah, absolutely, I will get on the bus or whatever," I said, "Listen, I will. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." And I was happy to do that. So it is, again, very, very similar to what I experienced in America before I left, and what men consistently tell me, either one-on-one, or what I see on social media, is that women do all the time. They essentially do not want to invest at all into meeting a man, and essentially the only men that they are meeting are the losers and simps who are willing to pay just to meet a girl, just to meet a pretty girl. Here's some money up front. And that's quite pathetic. Now, there's one girl that I remember, who I was at this live music lounge, and she kind of like smiled and waved me over, and we met, and she's like, "Can I have your number?" We talked, and I said, "Well, let me take you out," right? Because she was with a friend, and she wanted to get back to spending time with her friend, because it was just her and a friend, and her friend was essentially like out of the conversation as we were talking. I said, "Yeah, sure, let's go out tomorrow." And she ended up being one of the girls who stood me up, and then gaslit me, of course, after that. And now, what I did not see the tattoo on her, which normally is a deal breaker for me, but I just didn't see it. It was cold, and she was wearing pants. And then later on, when I saw some of her pictures on Instagram, I realized she has a leg tattoo. So she still stood me up. So that is where where you gentlemen should do what I have done a while back, and practice what's called radical acceptance. There is no logic behind it. Why would a girl, in front of everybody, including her friend, go out of her way and essentially approach a guy, right? Go on a limb, possibly get rejected, um, and end up actually getting the number, getting invited on a date with a foreigner who can change her life, get her out of that mud hut, and yet still does not show up on the date. This is one of those things that they absolutely make no sense. And the more you think about it, the more you try to find the reasoning behind it, the more you're going to fail and drive yourself crazy. This is one of those things that you just have to accept. Women, especially English speaking women, when it comes to picking men, are absolutely retarded. They could be PhD brain surgeons, right? Like, I have no problem, if I ever need brain surgery, if it is a female brain surgeon, because I think women can get very, very fucking smart, just as smart as men. But when it comes to picking their partners, they are literally the dumbest species on the planet. A earthworm I think makes better decisions about who they're gonna lay eggs with than a Western female, and in this case, Kenyan girl as well. So these are the phenomenons that I have definitely was quite shook by. Like I said, I expected a country with uh, that's English speaking to have a lot of bullshit that you know you guys see in America and in Europe, but I did not expect it for it to be at that degree because, like I said, these women need men. They need providers so bad. I've seen some women who could not afford to have good dental care, and so they have like teeth falling out in their 20s. I've seen some women who cannot pay their cell phone bills. I've seen some women who cannot sometimes have an extra meal that they would like to have. They would only have 2 meals instead of 3 meals a day, right? I've seen some women who could not afford to have a heater because actually, believe it or not, it was kind of quite freezing in Africa near the equator. Uh, you know, but I digress there. So these women absolutely need a man, and yet they don't. They don't. So but I also have to say that with all of these issues that I have sometimes with dating scene here, sometimes in Thailand, I come back definitely appreciating that much more nowadays than before. So, all right, now let me talk about. So, by the way, never again. I'm never coming to the country again. And let me talk if you're interested. And we're going to kind of talk about now Kenya. Um, Let's talk about Kenya as a country because, like I said, I visited for 2 weeks, and I rarely agree with Donald Trump. I do once in a while, and I do agree that this is a shithole country. And it has nothing to do with dating. It has to do with the culture. It has to do with the attitude. It has to do with the government that, by the way, is democratically elected there. And it has to do with so many other things, including service and pricing and so forth and so forth and so forth. First of all, Kenya is the first country that I visited as a white foreigner that where people came across as, hey, white man. And by the way, they would literally say that, hey, white man, give me money. I have been to countries where, there are people who would beg, right, including America, and people who will sell useless shit, but it's kind of like, well, buy my shitty candy because I need money to eat, right? So they would either ask and beg or try to provide some sort of service or product. Not in Kenya. In Kenya, if you're white, you owe me money. As a matter of fact, I talked to a couple of Kenyan people who grew up in America and have American accent. They're saying that once people hear their accent, you don't even have to be white. You can just have a white person's accent. They get the same thing. And it got into ridiculous. So everywhere you go, you always ask for money. And they call it buy me coffee, by the way. At first I was like, there's no coffee shop around. What do you mean? You want me to go and find a coffee shop? What? But apparently it's just give me money. So they're like, basically, oh, you're white, give me money. But it got into really shitty situations where you would get into Uber and the guy would look back and say, oh, a white guy. And it would be like, give me another 500 shillings, and you're like, what? I'm already paid for the fare through the app, through my credit card. Says, yeah, but I need, and if you don't give them essentially the white tax money, they'll kick you out of Uber. And it happened to me, and it happened to the girls who I would be sending home in an Uber. If they so I kind of had to get smarter and basically let the girls go without me, so the driver does not see that I am white. And I also removed my picture from my profile, so they cannot see it in my profile either. And by the way, Uber doesn't give a shit. I tried talking to Uber. I said, this is happening, and they're like, yeah, whatever. So it is bullshit. You can call it reverse racism, but I don't think it's racism because, like I said, they do the same thing to their own people. It really has to do with, and this is my next point, is that just a poor man's mentality. Listen, I live in a country where there are plenty of people who live very poorly, and I've visited countries where people live even poorer than that, right? Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia. I've seen it all here in Southeast Asia. And but yet these people here have an amazing attitude where they essentially like, listen, we're happy with what we have and we don't need money to be happy. And you can feel the energy. Like I can go outside right now. It's what almost 1 in the morning. There will be people who are coming back from a 12-hour shift of a 6 day week, and then 40 plus or whatever 100 Fahrenheit degree weather, and they will be laughing, and they positive energy, they will be smiling, they will be doing good things for each other and to each other, and that's just the energy that I see here in Thailand and many other countries here in Southeast Asia, but not in Kenya. In Kenya, people are just always fucking depressed. They're always unhappy. They're grumpy and they're fucking rude. Everybody, not everybody, but like 80%, that's enough. To me, when it's like 5 or 10% of people grumpy, I was like, I don't know about this. But it's just like so many people. Now, a lot of it technically is not really their fault because their government doesn't give a shit, right? The infrastructure is not there, the dirt roads, the potholes everywhere, the unlivable, whatever mud huts that they have, a lot of people living in there. It is a tough place to live, right? And a lot of people who want to have jobs, genuinely want to have jobs, don't have jobs. And but on the other hand, like I said, it is a democratically elected government. They do elect their leaders, so that's a little bit on them as well. However, I also noticed that, like, for example, here in Thailand and many other countries here, a lot of people get very creative and work very hard to start their own little businesses. Like, even if it's a little two-wheeled cart with a tiny little grill, all rusted up, they will still get out of their place, push that cart to the corner of the street, cook something delicious and sell it, and provide great, excellent service and smile, and you'll have amazing food. And that's how they'll earn their little money, or sometimes a lot of money. Not in Kenya. I don't see that happening in Kenya almost at all. And when I talk to people, I said, there are a lot of businesses you guys can do online, right? Did you know that? Oh, no, we don't have any. No. I said, listen, first of all, you speak English, all of you. So you can be translators and tutors. A lot of you know math. Math is not a secret. You can tutor kids online. You know that, especially because you speak English. Do you know how many people in America and in Europe would love to get some of the artifacts from Africa? There's a lot of African Americans who are proud of their heritage that would love to get some things or maybe clothes from Africa because they may not be able to afford the actual trip, but they would love to have something that's handmade in a certain village in Africa. Have you ever thought about exporting that? And all of these people were just, I was blowing their minds about, like, hey, have you ever thought about like hustling for your money? There are opportunities online. We all have the same opportunities online, except for you guys have more because you speak English and you are in the middle of a lot of resources that people would like to buy. I also said, I couldn't find a tour guide to save my life. Someone who would say, okay, this is the neighborhood where you live in. This is the guy that you hired to go to the safari. This is the place, you don't walk down the street in this neighborhood after a certain amount of time. This is how you deal with Ubers and so forth. If you become just a guide who can guide foreigners like me through their time in Nairobi and Kenya, I would pay so much money for that. And yet there's just not such thing. So that was just the mentality, the poor man's mentality is definitely depressing. And again, I don't blame specific individuals, but this is a general culture there that I've noticed that was just quite disappointing. I'm going to go with disappointing. At the same time, it was weird because every time I wanted to get something to eat, I have not paid this much money for food since I was in America. I mean, you want to go to a coffee shop and order like even a burger with fries and a cup of coffee. My goodness, it's going to cost you 15 American dollars. What the, like here in Thailand, for example, I just had a chicken steak with pork steak with fries with salad, bottled water, and it was like $3 something something cents. I'm just giving you an example. So with people being so poor and services and rent being so little, I don't understand how they manage to charge so much money. And by the way, that's not just food. Souvenirs. The best bargain of souvenirs, because sometimes I like to bring like souvenirs from the countries I visit, the best bargain of the pricing of souvenirs was at the airport. That's where they had best pricing. Usually, if you get to the airport and you forgot to buy souvenirs, you're going to be taken to a bank, right? As you should. Souvenirs at like regular markets are very, very cheap. Here in Thailand, you can buy something for $1. At the airport, it would be $10, but not in fucking Kenya. I would come up to like in the middle of nowhere. I remember we drove to a safari like almost 3 hours away, and 2.5 hours in or 2 hours in, like 2 hours from Nairobi, right? There will be like this souvenir shop, artifacts shop that wasn't even a fucking building. It was just like more of a tent, like a mud hut essentially. And I think I picked up like a little souvenir, was like a little notebook, with African material outside. Like a lot of countries have that. We have it here, and you would pay about $1 to $2 for that. $15. And I'm like, wait, am I translating the Kenyan shillings to American dollars correctly? Yes, I am. And it just was so weird to consistently having these such high prices where the labor and stuff and rent is just so cheap, and you just always feel like you're being fucked over. Nairobi National Park. I don't usually go to national parks, and I know in some countries like even Thailand, you'll pay a little bit more for national parks because you haven't been paying in taxes for it, like the actual citizens. So that's fair. But we're talking about $3 for a Kenyan citizen and $43 for a foreigner in Nairobi National Park. What? I'm speechless, right? Now, here's another thing that bothered me on top of that. Not only the pricing was high, but when I'm paid for something and it's a lot of money, or within context, I at the very least expect good service. That wasn't fucking happening either. The service at these restaurants and coffee shops was, with some exceptions, fucking pathetic. I remember one time I ordered tea. Now, you guys know what tea is, right? It's boiled water with just a tiny little piece of tea bag in there, right? Tea bag about 10-20 cents. You sell it for $5 there in Nairobi. Great fucking business, right? And I remember ordering tea and it just wouldn't come. And I was like, so I had to, the waitresses weren't coming over at all. So I had to come over and ask. And they finally brought me tea, and the waitress says, yeah, I'm really sorry, but I had to talk to this guy who runs the boiling water machine to turn it back on because he's already shut it down for the night. I'm like, wait, you're an hour before closing. How is he shutting down the machine that's making you, I don't know, 1,000% of profit? What? Like, how is this? Where is there managers here? Like, who's running? Like, why hire a guy who doesn't want to do his job when there's a long, long, long line outside of people who would like to have a job and do that actually well, where the customer is satisfied and the owner gets to make money? So, and it was everything, like with Nairobi National Park, again, charging a lot of money. I tried to ask him some questions by, they do WhatsApp and email customer support. Replied one time, after that, stopped replying, right? It is, I've been to 31 countries now, and I lived on 3 different continents. I have never seen such a huge gap between the quality of service and the pricing for that service and products. So that's another thing that I've noticed that was just completely just unacceptable. Now, of course, the fact that, the roads are shit, the buildings are shit. It was actually quite cold there. And I was cold not for like an hour. Because also I don't own warm clothes. Here it's always 100 degrees outside or 40 degrees Celsius. I was cold for 2 fucking days, and I'm not lying to you guys. I I wake up, I go to a coffee shop, they don't have a heater. No heater at all. Just try to hide in the warmer part of the of the coffee shop. Go outside into the mall, cold. Go into a fucking car, an Uber. I'm like, can you turn the heater on? Oh, heater's not working. How the fuck is heater not working? You know what heater is? It literally gets the heat from the goddamn engine. No, not working. Come to my condo. My condo turns out not only it doesn't have a heater, it doesn't even have boiling like hot water on demand. You have to like literally turn a boiler on to boil some water in the water heater in order to have hot water in like half an hour, right? So I'm freezing cold. I'm freezing cold for 48 hours, and there's just no heaters anywhere. I've never seen such poorly run society. And again, maybe I'm spoiled here in Thailand, but like people don't, for example, bump into each other very often. And when they do, not only they turn around and say sorry, they say sorry with a Y, like you're supposed to. In Kenya, like once again, I felt like I was in America. People are on everyone's way, everyone's bumping each other, no one's apologizing, no one gives a shit. By the way, you can also not hold your phone like anywhere more than 2 inches away from you, because if you're out and about, someone on a motorcycle can come up and snatch it out of your hands. You cannot even do it while you're inside a car with windows rolled down, because someone will reach out, and sometimes people will, even if the window's up, they will open the door and grab the goddamn thing. Here in Thailand, I go to a coffee shop in the middle of a very busy mall. Like a lot of people walk by. I would say 100 people walk by me every 10 minutes. And over there, I leave my laptop, I leave my phone sometimes, I leave my actually jewelry when because I take it off when I work on my computer, and my glasses and my backpack with everything, including stuff in it. And I go and get a haircut, or go get something to eat, or go to the bathroom, and I come back, all of my shit is there. Like that part of my brain that responsible for thinking that people are going to be shitty people and they're going to steal my stuff, like that part of my brain hasn't been activated in a long time. But in Kenya, all I was thinking about is like, oh, should I drink a lot of water? Because if I drink a lot of water, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom. And in order to go to the bathroom, I'm going to have to pack all of my shit here just to go to the bathroom so it doesn't get stolen. And I'm always have to be holding my phone like this, always have to be watching out for people trying to steal shit from me. And honestly, like it gotten really, really like it's just, I always felt like someone's after me, and it does not feel very good. At night, again, a lot of women said, well, I don't want to even meet you in a public place at night. And a lot of people say, please don't walk around at night as a white guy in this and this and this areas. And I know there are some bad areas, but we weren't talking about some like really bad areas. We're talking about like regular areas, and they're like, well, don't walk around. I mean, Uber cars, by the way, you either get a cardboard box or a really beat up car. And a lot of times the seat belts won't be working at all. So you're in an extremely unsafe car. Everyone's driving like a maniac, by the way. They don't even have separators on the road sometimes. And you don't have a seat belt. Many times I was put into situations that I only remember being put into in America. Because a lot of times in America is where you kind of have a choice between being an asshole and being the pushover. And I've been put a lot of situations like that in Kenya. For example, it was a live band playing. They had, believe it or not, they actually had, and this was like in a province north of Nairobi. I was like the only white guy for miles, and yet I was at the live music barbecue place that had a country night. So all these Kenyans were dressed in, cowboy boots and cowboy hats, and they were singing country music, which, by the way, was really good. So this main act comes on stage, and like 2 songs in, he's like, well, if you have any requests, and I love doing requests, right? You get to have a song that you like, sung in a new way, and you get to support the artist, right? And, I'm not a big fan of a country music, but there are a few country songs that I like, that I think everybody likes. So and the guy goes like, yeah, I request. So I run up there as like the first guy with a paper, and I put some money into it. And I was like, I wait, and and then there's some people who come up to the guy and ask for just with, how would I say, by voice. And then he keeps playing requests, and then an hour and a half passes. And I see he just took so many requests, and I'm like, I gotta go. Plus, I'm cold again. So, but so what do I do? I gave this guy money, you know, and he hasn't played my song in an hour and a half. Played everyone else's song. So I mean, I was like, oh fuck, okay, like so, I don't want to make a big deal, but I had to fucking. I was like, no, I'm sorry, like I'm gonna yank my money back, you know. So like, what do you do, right? You either leave feeling getting robbed, right, or you leave feeling like, you're this just you're an asshole, right? And a lot of times, I pick asshole because at least like I feel like my pride is intact, but I'm not even proud of that, you know. So and over and over and over and over, unlike in Thailand and very much like in America, I was put in situations where it's like, hey, Alex, you're either going to be an asshole or you're going to feel really shitty and disrespected and be a pushover. And that's just not a good society to be in, you know. Some guys also, I know I already talked about dating, but a lot of men, for example, not a lot, but some men told me that it's very common for a guy to just like, hook up with a girl, get her pregnant, which is on everybody that they don't use protection, and then move to a different county because you can't collect child support from a different county, I guess. And it's just strategy. It's a strategy to avoid using condoms, and yet women do it, and there's a bunch of single mothers running around there. And I see the same problem, as I mentioned already, with dating, that women are very much, modernized and independent, and lots of single mothers, and they're not having a very good luck with men, and that makes them become even more, feminist, and less opportunities to have good men around. And it's a vicious circle, just like in America. I Another interesting thing is that the place that I was frequenting, had some good food and live music, but also had a horrible service. And every night I was like, "Hey, is the owner here?" And everyone's like, "No, owner's not here. No, owner's not here." And at first, I just wanted to talk to him and see, what it's like to run a business here in Kenya, right? There in Kenya, and I realized that he's never there. So at the end of my stay, I don't really like submitting Google reviews or Yelp reviews, but I was like, I don't think the owner knows how bad the staff is. And a lot of other like regulars, Kenyans who come there, like, oh yeah, the service sucks here. Don't expect anything, right? But I'm like, but we're paying like $20 a plate sometimes here, and it's Kenya. I don't understand. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes I submit Google reviews just to kind of like let the owner know. Because when I ran a business in America that was brick and mortar business, I appreciate it when people would let me know what's happening at my business when I'm not around. Right. So I appreciated a 1-star review, and I wanted an opportunity to turn it around. And a lot of times I did. My business had a 5-star Yelp review in the entire area in the Bay Area. So so I was like, all right, I'm going to leave this review. But also I was like, I'm going to be fair because I do like their food. I like their music. That's why I keep coming back. Right. But I have a feeling the owner may not know how shitty their staff is. And then the staff is screwing him out of his own money. So I was like, I'm going to leave this review. He'll probably reply. Usually owners say, hey, can we talk offline? Can you tell me a little bit more about what's happening? And you do that, and you realize that, you don't want to damage this owner's business. Right. And you remove the review, right? The reviews are temporary to kind of, get a hold of the owner to let them know, right? Guess what happens with this review? The owner replies and goes like, you should have never come to my place. You should have never come to Africa. You should have never come to Kenya. Get the fuck out. That's the owner of the Kenyan business that took a lot of my money, right? And continues to take money and relies on foreigners like me, because very few people there can afford it, right? So completely relies on guys like me. And at the sign of any criticism and really help, I really like, he should know this. He should know that his own staff is screwing him out of his own money. His reaction was not like, whoa, let me see what's going on with my business. It's like, fuck off, So, and like, I don't want to go into all of these details, like for everything that happened, but the number of these things that happened to me like, I had more shitty things happen to me because of just the way the country is and the culture and people are, more times per day than I think I have here per year in Thailand. And like I said, it all goes because it goes to show that this is just a shitty culture and a shitty country, and I would never want to be back there. Like honestly, I don't like, besides America, when I was leaving, this was one of the few countries where I was like, I think India was the other country, and Japan, where I was like, whoa. And Japan still had some many perks, right? But I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to ever see these people again. I want to be part of this culture. I just want to go home. You know what I mean? And the funny thing is that I went to Egypt after Kenya, which is, not exactly my scene. Okay. I'm an American Jewish atheist. So a Middle Eastern Muslim country is not exactly the paradise but I was like, no, I've been to 3 Muslim countries before, but this would be probably the most typical Middle Eastern country. They have a very rich culture, but they also kind of in the middle. They're not too extreme and not too liberal in terms of the way they run Islam, and Islam is implemented into their country. And I got to tell you, I had such a better time in Egypt than with their culture, which again, I'm a very foreign to me in every single sense of the word. But I had such better time there. People were so much more kind and welcoming, and the service was great. And yeah, I honestly, like, I have nothing pretty much negative to say about you know Arabs living in Egypt, Egyptian people. A lot of them actually spoke Russian to me, which was great. Not that it's a requirement for me to like a country, but I'm just saying it was a perk. So yeah, it was definitely a disappointing trip. However, would I have done it if I knew all of this? Surprisingly to you, probably the answer is yes, and I'll tell you why. Because my original, yes, I went there to run some experiments with dating, because I run this channel that essentially is all about dating. But my main goal was, and again, this is kind of a bucket list item that I still have on my bucket list. It's a little silly, but I wanted to see a giraffe in the wild. Okay, not in a zoo, not in a national park, just like giraffe untouched by people, who's just there. And oh boy, Kenya has delivered. Now I had to be taken to a safari about 2.5 hours away, where that safari did not have any predators. So giraffes and zebras and many other animals, and including me, humans, can roam around with no problems without getting attacked and eaten. Like, for example, in National Park, Nairobi National Park, there are cheetahs and leopards and lions. So they're all predators. So if you get out of the SUV and they're around, dinner. And I had a great time in in Nairobi's National Park as well, because we did get to see a lot of predators, and on and on and on. But this other safari, the things I didn't like about the national park in Nairobi is that you can still see the skyline of Nairobi. And I'm like, it doesn't feel like safari. It doesn't feel like this giraffe is wild giraffe if I see the fucking Citibank building. You know what I mean? But the other one that we drove to for a while, there was nothing. That was a real safari. Now they do have, like, it was next to a huge lake, and that lake had like over 1,000 hippos. And hippos, I didn't know this, so I'm selling for what I bought. Hippos kill more humans in Africa than any other animal. So they're very aggressive. So during the day, hippos are in water, but at night they start coming out, and that's where you need to get the fuck out of there, because they will fucking attack you and kill you. But while hippos were playing with water, enjoying the jacuzzi, you can be on land and you can walk around. And I walked around among zebras and antelopes, and many other amazing animals. And at some point, I was walking through this little, safari forest, and boom, a giraffe. A wild giraffe appeared in front of me. They're not really that scared of you, because they're like, well, this is just another animal. They all get along. Like, all these animals are getting along, so I think there was a buffalo also chilling next to giraffe. So it was like, the buffaloes you got to be a little bit careful with. But, it's like a giraffe. And giraffe's like, oh, what's up? Weird animal I don't really see normally. And I just hung out there. I just stood there, a few meters, few feet away from this giraffe. And I've done the same thing with like zebra, for example. And that was a mind-blowing experience. That was definitely a mind-blowing experience. That made it all worth it. all worth it. And again, maybe it's because it's my little childish dream of seeing a giraffe in the wild, but my goodness, it was all worth dealing with all of the bullshit that Kenya threw at me. And obviously the negative memories usually fade away, but the positive, amazing memories stay with you forever. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about collecting memories, because that's all you really have, right? Like, for example, I was trying to tell this to someone very young, like 19, the other day. I was like, I love being old. Just so you know, you think I'm dead, but I love being old because I've experienced all these things already, and I've gathered all these feelings. I can just close my eyes, and I can go and get the experience that I've already experienced, and I can feel the feeling and smell the smells. And you can do it because you haven't done it. As a matter of fact, you don't even know if you will ever do those amazing things that I've already done and have memories right here. So this was all about making a memory. I also had an amazing memory at the village, African village. Just, I remember that from my childhood, because in Russia we would also go to like a village during summer. Just simple life. Just simple life. I fucking love it. Quiet, simple. That's it. People don't even have cell phones there in some cases, which is, pure joy. And then in some cases, I didn't have a reception, so I didn't even have a cell phone. So that was just absolutely amazing how happy people can be with when they don't have anything. It sounds like paradoxical, but it was just great to be there. I just really thoroughly enjoyed that. And of course, the pyramids in Egypt, but that's a whole different story. Uh, Definitely interesting experience as well. But as far as Kenya is concerned, because I did meet some good people. I definitely met some good people, and I'm thinking, what do I wish on them? Right? I don't want to come back. I don't want to come back. Like I said, shithole country, shitty people, shitty culture, shitty. I don't like anything there. But there were some good people, and even people who are shitty. Like I just didn't feel it was like their fault. And what I would wish on those people who I did friend and really wish well is that um, they either become a part of in evolving culture, and get out of their poor mindset and create opportunities and see the opportunities that they have there, in at the very least make a little bit of money, or get the fuck out of there. I mean, listen, I very much, and I am in position to tell people to get the fuck out of the place where things are bad. Now, I know Kenyan passport is not exactly a very strong passport, and it's not like they have money to travel and all that stuff, but it is possible. My family immigrated out of Russia, where we realized that we could not live there anymore. And I did it myself as an adult when I believed America was no longer a country for me to live in, as I felt like as a second class citizen, as a white guy, which never happened to me before. And I ended up in a country that's amazing for now, right? Thailand may turn into something else that I may not like, and there will be time to go somewhere else. But I wish that on my Kenyan friends that I made in Kenya, that they either beat the system and become part of the newer, better culture, or get the fuck out of there and essentially build their life somewhere else where people are respectful, where they don't have to be put in a situation where they either have to be an asshole or a pushover. And that was my experience with Kenya. And to kind of wrap it up in terms of summarizing it, animals were amazing, people were not. And I'm not really sure even if I'm that surprised. I mean, you know, I would say if you take an average 10 people that I see every day, an average 10 dogs or cats that I see every day, you know, and okay, maybe in Thailand is not true because people here are amazing, but let's say in America, right? I would say I think the animals are kinder to me than people, and Kenya was kind of a poster child for that. So yeah, that just wanted to share this with you. And like I said, I hate to talk shit about a country I just visited, but I'm also trying to be honest. I wish somebody would make a video like this warning me about a lot of things that I might have experienced there that I didn't want to. So it is what it is. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right. It is past 1 o'clock here in Bangkok, Thailand. I know I kind of separated this live stream into two parts, dating and then the rest of my trip. Hope you enjoyed both. And as always, I will see you next time, which will probably be next week, the same time. All right. I will talk to you guys later. Peace.